So, Shamaria, what was the original ordinance's purpose?
Well, they wanted to make it a crime in Marshall County to enforce any federal or state laws regarding firearms considered an unlawful act by the county. Over the weekend, Neal said the ordinance is now on hold. Now, text messages we've obtained through an open direct request shows messages between Neal and the county commissioners. There you have them there, Justin Lamb, Kevin Spraggs, and Monty Collins. And they also include email threads from the originators of the ordinance, Gun Owners of America. And then at 6, we will tell you what those messages say and how long it actually took us to obtain the public documents.
Okay, Shamaria, thank you. New at 5, this husband and wife are staying in jail tonight and for the next several years. Former Catawba City Clerk Katie Harrison and her husband and former city employee Clayton Harrison were sentenced today for stealing thousands of dollars from the city of Catawba. Local 6's Leah Shields has been following this case for more than a year now. So, Leah, did we learn anything new today?
Yes, we did. The Commonwealth Attorney says that the Harrisons stole a total of $31,000 from the city of Catawba, but they'll only have to pay back $17,000 of that, and that's because Katie was bonded, which means insurance has paid back some of it already. The couple was sentenced separately in court today. Katie Harrison's attorney asked for probation, saying,
Ho, ho, ho. That is the very person that ruined my life. I identify him. Let's go back. That's him. C.A. Woodall III. This guy right here, I'm pretty sure, I'm 99% sure, the name rings a bell anyway. This guy right here is the guy that wound up putting me on a big Kentucky bond and then ordered me after the second time of me being evaluated by certain entities of the state of Kentucky working through Land Between the Lakes with LBL. This guy here is the guy that put an order out for me to go get psycho evaluated again, another psych valve, all the way up in Lynchburg, Kentucky, I believe it was. May not have been Lynchburg. It was somewhere way up in Kentucky. Anyways, this was the guy here that forced me to get on Risperdal, the drug that has wound up causing me to be 340 pounds, even though I've had 2 broken legs and 2 crushed ankles and a messed up lower part of my back and 2 broken arms in 1979. It was these evil, demonic, wicked, cruel, insensitive people that went all the way to the state of Oklahoma to pick me up over 2 telephone calls that was non-threatening, that was in an apologetic form. And they basically railroaded my public defender, which was, let me think of her name real quick. I can't even think of her name right off the bat. But my public defender said that there is no way that Mr. Jackson has done anything wrong pertaining to being under any type of violation. And there's no way that Mr. Jackson should be charged for a stalking charge. If anything, maybe possibly telephone harassment, but you can't even justify that if one telephone call was made in exchange to the other telephone call that was made. And first of all, one telephone call was made to the LBL headquarters, and the other telephone call was made to Gary Hawkins, and both telephone calls was separated almost in a 90-day period. A 90-day period, almost 3 months. And both telephone calls, neither one of them was threatening, and both of them was in an apologetic form. This is the reason why the state of Kentucky is upside down towards having entirely too many prisoners in their prison system, to the degree that it's going to basically cause the state of Kentucky to go bankrupt the same way basically as the state of Illinois, unless the state of Illinois is smart enough to pull itself out of the hole. If I'm not mistaken, that judge right there is in Cadiz, Kentucky, a little bitty old rinky-dink town, and if the truth be known, he's probably been a judge there for years and years and years. And I'm not saying that some of the people that go in front of him doesn't deserve to be punished by him. I'm not saying that at all, because I feel quite confident there's a great deal of people, probably 90% of the people that go in front of him actually have committed some sort of crime. But to think that they use the powers of a federal park to put out a federal warrant to go after me all the way out to Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, over 2 telephone calls that was non-threatening, and he's still at work. Look at him. He's still doing his thing. Nobody has contested him. Nobody has pulled him off of the bench. This what has happened to me has been an inside job. My public defender wound up quitting being a public defender in that county because of that very reason. She had a husband that was a judge, a juvenile judge, in the next county over, which would be Christian County, over in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. Let's listen to the rest of this, because it just breaks my heart. It irritates me to death to think that these lifelong career judges are still on the bench, still doing what they're doing to people's lives. And you know good and well, if they done it to mine, there ain't no telling how many other people that they've railroaded the exact same way. And there ain't no telling how many people that should have probably got life without parole that basically only got a slap on the back of the hand. So whatever that occurs in the state of Kentucky in the next few years, people like this is the very people that has brought it upon to their good citizens in the state of Kentucky.
I believe that she's very sorry for what happened.
Commonwealth's attorney, Carrie Ovey-Wiggins, says due to the serious...
That looks like the courthouse. It was all, looked like maple wood. And that very well looks just identical to the courthouse.
...and the amount of felonies she faces, probation is not recommended.
The audit that was done.
You see the flag in behind his head. Keep in mind, this is coming out of the local station, WPSD, out of Paducah, Kentucky. The Commonwealth attorney, I don't know, Carrie something, Oval Winglers, but you'll see that flag in behind that guy's head, in behind that guy's chair. This is the state of Kentucky.
In this case, showed that she started stealing money from the very first month that she was employed from the city of Catawba, and that
Yeah, that's it. That's it, because where they keep the prisoners at is back over here to the left. You got to go back, way back over here, and they got a cell over here, that a holding cell that holds the inmates, so they can come out onto the floor to be heard or to be tried. That's it. That's where Jimmy Long took me, because I had a pretty good idea. That's one reason why I wanted to leave my vehicle here with David, But I had a pretty good idea that they was fixing to railroad the hell out of me. And sure enough, Flemings, I think it was, Attorney Flemings, female public defender. She come back there to my holding cell after I'd already done stood in front of the judge. Stood in front of the judge. Different things was being said about my charges. I went back into the cell. Of course, I'm pleading not guilty. You know, that's typical protocol. And she comes back there to the cell. She goes, Mr. Jackson, they're wanting to evaluate you. What do you think about them evaluating you? And I thought for a couple minutes. I thought good long and hard before I answered. Because usually whenever you answer to these people, whatever answer that you give them is going to stick just like glue. But I thought good long and hard, and I said, you know what? I don't think too much of it. She goes, why is that? I go, because they've already gave me an eval up in Chicago, the same group of people in Land Between the Lakes. I go, in addition to that, it was in 2007, or I'm pretty sure it was 207, it may have been 208, is whenever I got evaluated by Four Rivers Behavior Center, and they compounded my truck, and the state trooper office there in between Mayfield, Kentucky and Paducah, Kentucky, held it overnight. And I didn't know for sure if I was going to get it out. And the only way that I could have gotten it out was I had to pay a rollback, a record bill. Even though there wasn't no doctor's orders and even though there had never been no charges. Because the doctors that night, after they evaluated me up in Four Rivers Behavior Center there in Mayfield, they go, Mr. Jackson, they have made a mistake with you. They need to let you go. You don't deserve to be held in confinement. Well, the state troopers was bungfuzzled. They acted like that they was just surprised. What? We got to let this guy go? So, because they didn't have no other place to put me, they drive me from Mayfield back to Paducah, Kentucky, and drop me off in a cemetery. A cemetery that I wound up laying in between two rocks. And I'm just going to show my viewers real quick that I'm not lying about these events. As a matter of fact, it's all on record pertaining to their files. But if you look right here, hopefully you can see it. There's where I stayed in between two rocks. And these was the rocks going into Paducah, Kentucky. On the left-hand side of Big Cemetery, there was a hotel to the right of it, but I wound up staying, getting ate up by mosquitoes in between these cemetery rocks. And this one cemetery rock had this type of a logo on it, or a symbol. I don't know what that symbol was about, but there's where I stayed. And that was the first evaluation. Now, how would I still have these records if what I'm saying isn't so? Now, naturally, they have let time elapse to the point that now various deputies that work for the Kentucky State Trooper Office has probably already retired or quit or moved on to other jobs. And they're probably going to be in total denial about this. Other than the fact that, by law, the records that they have obtained in that courthouse right there has to stay in that courthouse. Not only do the records have to stay in that courthouse, but the records also have to stay in the courthouse, in the Paducah, Kentucky courthouse pertaining to the federal courthouse. Those are records. I actually have that particular proceedings on a DVD of what took place in Paducah, Kentucky, where the judge was actually complimenting me. That was round number 2. What you're looking at right here is round number 3. They wasn't going to be satisfied until they wound up putting me on some sort of heavily medicated psychiatric medication. LaGrange, Kentucky is where they sent me. A state facility that is well known of chemically seducing people to death. After they put me on this Ristatol that was ordered from that judge, Judge Woodall, as soon as I got back out of that hospital, which I think I was only in there maybe for about 3-4 weeks, a month, maybe 6 weeks, they still continued to give me the drug while I was in Christian County Jail. In the meantime, I'm steadily swelling up. I'm getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's not because of the potatoes and gravy that I'm eating in the prison system. It's because of the drug that they gave me, which is known of causing obesity and breast enhancement. How come I can't sue the court system for this type of injury that they have done to me? How come I can't sue the drug manufacturer, even though the drug manufacturer has been sued all over the United States, I guess in all 52 states, towards basically going at them the same way that they went after the Saster narcotic family. I don't know if they caused them to go bankruptcy or not, but and I may have the name wrong. It may be Saxter or something. It starts with a S, pertaining to the opioid problem. But how come I can't get some sort of closure in how that these people had deliberately tried to ruin my life? Deliberately. Like I said, Jimmy Long took me up there. Jimmy Long would have been sitting back there where the congregation is. If I'm not mistaken, he was sitting right about there. Because whenever I come in, I was on a bond, but it was only a $1,500 bond. As soon as I come in, we was sitting right about here on the right-hand side. As I'm sitting there, getting ready for a hearing, 2 police officers comes back there and says, stand up, you're under arrest. I go, what for? I'm here for an arraignment. Well, we're arresting you again. Well, what did I do? I was told to be here for court, and I'm here at court. Well, we just want to make sure you ain't going nowhere. So they put handcuffs on me while I've got civilian clothes on and takes me back over here where the holding cell is. And that's where I remain for, I guess, about an hour or so before my case ever comes up to be heard. Whenever my case comes up to be heard, that's whenever they go through all this blah, 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 blah stuff. And that's shortly after is whenever my public offender that was assigned to me comes back there and says, well, it don't matter if you want to go for another psychiatric evaluation or not, Mr. Jackson. Judge Woodall has ordered it to be done. Ordered it. It's probably a good thing that I went ahead and didn't volunteer, because if I would have volunteered, the next thing you know, I'd have been having to have paid a big hospital bill towards being evaluated up in LaGrange, Kentucky, which would have probably been another $12,000, $15,000, $20,000. This is how the state of Kentucky operates, folks. While I'm in LaGrange Hospital, after me staying in Christian County Jail, give or take, for about, I guess, probably 6 weeks, finally an opening comes up for me to be able to go to LaGrange, Kentucky. Well, after they packed me up, sent me all the way up there, which is give or take about a 2 or 3 hour drive, because it's way up there, pretty close to Louisville. Matter of fact, I think it's on the other side of Louisville. I'm pretty sure it is. On the other side of Louisville, Kentucky, not too far from the Ohio River. It's not quite up towards Cincinnati, Ohio, up towards Florence, Kentucky, but it's in between there. So I'm in there for 2 days. Doctors are looking at me, evaluating me. Nurses coming in, checking my blood pressure, checking my temperature, acting very professional. And all of a sudden, the doctor comes up. He goes, well, I've decided to put you on this drug, Mr. Jackson. We feel like that you're hallucinating. I go, hallucinating? What am I supposed to be hallucinating about? I go, it was the judicial system in the state of Kentucky that grabbed me up while I was making about $2,000 a week in the state of Oklahoma doing auto body work. A matter of fact, whenever I was arrested, I had just got through putting a door skin on a F-250, red in color, the right side, the passenger side, and I had Bondo dust on me from head to toe whenever the Kentucky authorities come in there and drug me down to Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and put me under restraints. And within the first 24 hours, I go in front of a Oklahoma judge on some sort of like a teleprompter. I didn't actually talk to the judge. I was just kind of talking to the TV set. And this judge told me, he goes, well, they've got 2 felonies against you. I don't know what, he goes, I don't know what you done or what you didn't do, but by law, we have to hold you here for 10 days. He goes, if they don't come and pick you up within a 10-day period, by law, on the 11th day, I can open up the jail cell and let you back out, and you can go do whatever you want to do, Mr. Jackson. I go, well, isn't this something? Here I had done rented out a 3-bedroom house, making really, really good money. Just had gotten the charges dropped in Oklahoma towards a bunch of bogus BS about me supposedly threatening one of their Oklahoma officers, in which I never did. And now I'm standing in front of this teleprompter and this judge is telling me this. Well, I guess they probably put me in one of the meanest blocks with one of the meanest people. But believe it or not, God was on my side, and me and that guy never did get into one scrap. I could tell by being around this guy that he was a dope fiend, and I could tell by being around this guy that he wasn't one to play with towards scrapping. God took care of me, just like shutting the lions' mouths. And that guy basically become my friend for the next 6 days. Even though I was confined in a little 8x8 cell with this guy. This guy told me some horror stories about the stuff that he had been through with the officials in Kentucky towards making a bunch of meth. And they already had his place under surveillance, and he'd already been arrested several different times, and he was fixing to go up this time for a major drug offense, and he was probably looking at about 10 years. So he really, I mean, he was basically my age. A 10-year sentence for somebody that's, you know, already soon to be, actually I think he was a little older than me, was basically a life sentence. So he had nothing to lose. They come and picked me up on about the 6th day and drug me from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, through the northern part of Oklahoma, through Kansas, through Nevada, and went all the way up to South Dakota, and then shot due east and went through 2 or 3 other states and come back down through Wisconsin, circled down through Chicago, went down by the southern tip of the lakes, went back up into Michigan, way up in the northern part of Michigan, before they finally come back down over to Kentucky. It was one of the most cruelest, unhumane rides that I think that I've ever been on in my entire life, sitting on a steel plate in a confined bus with about 12 other inmates, 6 on one side, 6 on the other, being jarred up and down, back and forth, basically on a log wagon, to the point that my whole ass end was totally numb for about a week whenever they finally got me to my place that they wanted me to go. Cruel and indecent treatment over a telephone call, over a group of people that didn't want peace, that has now turned their state totally upside down.
Continued every single month that she was employed for the city.
Katie was sentenced to 9 years in prison for dozens of felony charges, including forgery and tampering with evidence. Her husband's attorney asked for probation too, but it was also denied. The Commonwealth attorney explained that Katie forged paychecks to him to cash, and that his involvement in the case is just as serious. The judge agreed.
Less culpable doesn't mean not culpable.
That's him.
And you obviously did clearly have the intent.
That's him.
To take money that was not earned and did not belong to you.
Clayton Harrison was sentenced to 3 years in prison for 12 charges, which were mostly possession of a forged instrument. The money they stole was taxpayer money, which is money that could have been used for roadways or sewage. The new city clerk, Savannah McLeod, did not want to talk on camera today, but she did confirm that this really hurt the city, but they are bouncing back. Live in Catawba, Leah Shields, WPSD Local 6.
All right, Leah, thank you. Both Katie and Clayton have already served more than a year behind bars. Neither of them spoke today at that sentencing. Lawmakers return.
Now, it sounds to me like they need to go to jail if they done what they said that they done, and they're guilty of it.
To Capitol Hill today under a cloud of crisis, with the potential of armed conflict with Iran now eclipsing the battle over impeachment. House Democrats are readying a war powers vote to limit President Trump's options as he vows to quickly and fully strike back against any new Iranian attacks. All this since the U.S. airstrike killed Iran's top general.
Promises that is coming. Over the weekend, a red flag symbolizing a declaration of war raised above a mosque. This morning, the Iranian government announcing they are suspending commitments to the 2015 nuclear deal President Trump walked away from months ago. Iran now abandoning limits on enriching uranium and stockpiling nuclear fuel. Members of the Iranian parliament also chanting death to America, officials saying retaliation would target the U.S. military. President Trump warns that if there is retaliation, he has 52 Iranian targets in his sights, some, he says, at a very high level and important to Iran and the Iranian culture. Targeting cultural sites is considered a war crime. Today, Iran's president firing back, tweeting, those who refer to the number 52 should also remember the number 290, the number of people killed when the U.S. accidentally shot down an Iranian passenger plane in the 80s. Rouhani's message to Trump: never threaten the Iranian nation.
So let's get right to Martha Raddatz, who's with us live tonight from Tehran. And Martha, you and I have both reported from inside Iran, and the Iranian people have often told us that they have felt the U.S.-led sanctions for years. But today I noticed the crowds there with you noting something very different, calling for revenge, and the Iranian government under tremendous pressure tonight to act.
They are, David. The emotion was so high today here, David. We saw many people weeping, but it was mixed with anger and a real desire for revenge, and anger clearly aimed at President Trump. David?
Martha Raddatz leading us off from Tehran tonight. Martha, thank you. And as I mentioned at the top, the U.S. military on the move tonight. 6 B-52 bombers are reportedly being relocated to the Indian Ocean tonight, and the first of nearly 4,000 new troops have already arrived in the Middle East. And another troubling development tonight, the U.S. and NATO this evening now saying they are halting the fight against ISIS for now to protect themselves. ABC senior foreign correspondent Ian Pannell from inside Iraq tonight.
Tonight, the faces of the young American servicemen and women now landing in Kuwait. 3,500 from the 82nd Airborne, part of a rapid deployment in the growing crisis with Iran. This comes despite the president's pledges to draw down from the region.
The plan is to get out of endless wars, to bring our soldiers back home.
The Iraqi parliament, angry at the killing of Soleimani on their soil, voting to kick US troops out of the country. It's non-binding, but shows how high tech.
Now, as this is escalating, I want you to keep in mind this group of people, not only here in western Tennessee, but parts of Kentucky, West Virginia, Maryland, Oklahoma, and Georgia, have been opposed to peace. They didn't want peace, which puts us now where we're presently at, towards chaos. It looks like chaos is literally fixing to unfold. But yet now, old Jewbee, the guy that's speaking to you right now, was up in the mountains, the land between the lakes, praying and fasting for a revival, for peace, and I get persecuted on account of it. Not once, not twice, but 3 major times because of the illegitimacies and the corrupt politicians in the state of Kentucky. And then I come back home in 2014 and total hell breaks out in my brother and my life. So whatever happens, I want this to be for the record that I tried and tried and tried for 30 years to get the people's attention, to open up their eyes pertaining to biblical Bible prophecy. Nobody wanted to hear what I had to say. Nobody.
The president's hit back. After repeatedly sanctioning Iran, he's now threatening to sanction the Iraqis too, saying, if they do ask us to leave, if we don't do it in a very friendly basis, we will charge them sanctions like they've never seen before. And now, more fallout from the assassination. America putting the fight against ISIS in Iraq and Syria on hold, so they can protect their own forces and bases instead. David, travelling to the Iraqi desert just months ago, miles from the Syrian border to see the ISIS threat.
I took note that while we were flying out here, you could hear the pilots talking about vehicles off in the distance.
Right.
Completely aware of really every isolated scene on the way out.
Yeah, it's just a reminder that this is ISIS is out there.
Tonight, anxious family members like 23-year-old Justice Palco's cousin worried for other members of his family.
Extremely difficult for the family, but extremely difficult for his new wife and his mom.
And so let's get to Ian Pannell with us from Erbil, Iraq tonight, with U.S. troops pausing that battle against ISIS you speak of. I know there's real concern about leaving ISIS fighters now unwatched, not monitored in this very volatile region.
Yeah, I think that's right. This is a highly dangerous moment. If those extremists go on the offensive, then men like these ISIS prisoners here in northeast Syria who said that they would attack, well, now with American and NATO troops standing to one side, there are only Iraqi troops standing in their way. And the last time that happened, the caliphate emerged. David?
A lot we're watching tonight, Ian, panel, our thanks to you as well. And at the White House this evening, increasing pressure on President Trump. Where is the evidence of the, quote, imminent attack that the president and the administration used to justify the deadly drone strike? Tonight, the president was asked about the evidence and how he answered. Here's ABC's chief White House correspondent, Jonathan Karl.
Amid rising tensions, Democrats tonight are demanding the White House make public the intelligence they used to justify taking out Qasem Soleimani.
Knowledge of the actions and justification should be shared with the American people in a timely manner.
President Trump has declared Soleimani was killed to thwart an imminent threat.
Soleimani was plotting imminent and sinister attacks on American diplomats and military personnel, but we caught him in the act. Now, I agree. If he was planning to wanting and going to do more harm and hurt to Americans and American soldiers, he should have been taken out. Our president done the right thing by eliminating this threat. And if the truth be known, the guy probably should have got eliminated 7, 8, 10 years ago, especially during Obama's administration.
Questions about just
if the truth be known,
how imminent the threat was. In an interview today, conservative talk radio host Rush Limbaugh asked the president to explain why he ordered the strike when he did.
Could you explain to people why what you've done here makes us safer, why it was necessary, and why what we did was right?
He should have been taken out a long time ago, and we had a shot at it, and we took him out. And we're a lot safer now because of it.
But the president made no mention of an imminent threat. This evening, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff told reporters the intelligence was, quote, compelling, adding,
"Did it exactly say who, what, when, where? No. But he was planning, coordinating, and synchronizing significant combat operations against U.S. military forces in the region, and it was imminent."
There you go. So if we know somebody is out to harm us and hurt us, that's why we have officials and our military. They're doing their jobs. They're taking care of the matters that need to be taken care of. That should have been taken care of during Obama's administration. Obama never should have given the Iranians all that money and given them the green light to nuclear. And now, because Obama done all that, Trump and other officials, not just Trump, but people all over the world, especially the leader of president over there in Jerusalem, Israel, said it was one of the most craziest things that anybody's ever seen. So now this administration had to go and basically jerk the biscuit out of the mouth of the Iranians that Obama put in there. And because of it, it has irritated them. It has upset them. And because of all the sanctions, that's even upset them that much more. So this was boiling. This was just a matter of time before, they'd already shot down a drone or two. They'd already attacked a boat. This was an ongoing deal that was happening right in front of our very eyes towards being provoked.